with. It's a demographic. It's a small demographic that surrounds itself with 5% enforcers, the lowest five. It puts them in positions of responsibility that they're not just inherently unqualified for, but their results are catastrophic on every measurable, and especially the immeasurable levels, the ephemeral levels that everyone discounts. Oh, this person, they have all the qualifications, so why shouldn't we just let them rip and tear? Well, maybe they just don't, it doesn't look like a good fit for some reason. The optics are messed up. So maybe the people that don't have time to get to know this superstar of metric qualifications just see somebody that looks to be odd in the position, not very trustworthy. Well, that has a net effect. That's the message. This is not trustworthy. Now, in a perfect world, that wouldn't happen, but this is just the world we live in. You know, you take 20 chimpanzees and then you take the smallest, runniest one and put them up on the podium. The chimpanzees in the crowd are going to start hooping and hollering, saying, "Hey, I'm gonna make a run for that thing, maybe," or this is ridiculous, right? Just think that again, this should be a new. There's so much comedy that can incorporate all of these realities that we live with because of these political forces at work. But on the other hand, I was thinking to myself, well, you know, this sounds pretty monolithic. I mean, it's international. You got bad actors here. I mean, it sounds very daunting on some level. But I want to renew the idea that we can change systems like immediately, like on the drop of a dime. It's been done in the past. It's been done in hundreds and hundreds and thousands of times throughout history in different countries for different reasons. Some of the changes that were drastic were not good. Some of them were sort of good, sort of bad. Some of them had excellent results. So it's sometimes people only change when they feel like they need to. Then we come back to political will. Oh, the political will never be there if these people are considered to be undefeatable. But here's a little light at the end of the tunnel. And it's not a very long tunnel. It's a short, wide tunnel. So you walk like 1 meter and then you're out on the other side. You can just change it with the stroke of a pen. One document gets ratified in the United States by the Senate and by the President, or some variation thereof. It's legal. It's done. The whole system is now different. And see, that is what scares totalitarians. That capacity is still within the architecture of our old system. It was put in there as like an emergency measure. There's the little red, you probably have this somewhere in the room. Look around, there's a little red box and there's a little hammer. You should break this glass in case of fire. That's what it is. That's what a government should be. A government should be adaptable to circumstances, especially surprising ones. Like, how about this? Oh, I was playing golf the other day. Wake up in the morning, I hear, we got ambushed. We got two ships sunk. What do we do now? Well, guess what? Everything changes just like that. The day before was fine. Now everything's crazy. So, what do you need? How about this? 3 pages. You write up this. You don't gotta make it long-winded. And then you see who's gonna sign it, who won't, and why. And if the reasons don't add up, perhaps there needs to be some publicity devoted to their strange positions that are counterintuitive under emergency conditions. This guy will not turn on the fire hose. He refuses. He says fire is not something to be worried about. It's the chief of the fire department, by the way. Something like that, I think that's information that the public should know about. If you're in a system that doesn't convey that information to the public, your system's broken. Fix it. It's essential that you fix it. And think about this, and there's no guarantees anything could break. Look at all that equipment, and open up the hood of your car, look inside, look anything there, look at all the things that can go wrong. One little gasket gets a hole in it. You don't know how to fix it, you need a mechanic. Just fix it. Your car breaks down, it's a bummer. Until the car gets fixed, you're not driving. It's a bummer. But you can have the patience and the skill to get through it, and you can get through patiently and skillfully. And then finally, when your car is fixed, you don't have that problem until, let's say, then the tire blows out. Then that's that problem. It would be ridiculous to ignore that problem. Just pull over, stop, address the problem. That's how governments work. And so you do have to realize, though, that there are invested parties that don't want that to happen. And potentially, if we're talking about enemy forces, or let's just say a malign influence, or people that are taking a position for reasons that aren't commensurate with public order or public good, then you can sort of reasonably assume that they're the bad factor. But of course, one person could be wrong. But when you make this public, will the public, if they're given accurate reports, will they feel differently about something as simplistic as political will to do the right things at the right time in the right way? Even if it's considered radical by a bunch of people that are part of the problem. Isn't it great when problematic people think that that's not the right solution? Maybe that is the right solution. Oh, why not? This company's not delivering. Every time we call up the phone, pick up the phone and call them, the line is busy. It's been 3 weeks. We need this for production. Every time we go there, there's some different type of story. Look, just have to drop them. So, well, that's business. Didn't start off that way. Maybe they even delivered, 30 years, no problem. Then the owner died or got switched out, and then all these things happen. And this is what precipitates the decision to cut something you didn't want to have to cut, didn't foresee having to cut, didn't want to cut. But you do it and you find someone else, or do it your damn self and everything, then that you just don't have those problems anymore. And just imagine that caused a significant amount of problems. And now you don't have a significant amount of problems because you addressed the a priori problem, which was a supplier that was not acting according to your expectations of his mandate as far as your business relationship was concerned. And your issues were not addressed, and so you made an executive decision, and now that's all in the past. It's not personal. It's nothing to get agitated about, nothing to get depressed about, nothing to get melancholy about. It's just the way things work versus the way things stay and remain and are broken, which is no way to live. There's something, again, masochistic about the people. See, it's really the sadist and then the masochist. Oh well, they're in charge, the sadists. We just got to put up with it. you can spot it, that you can get beyond that too. People that have that type of personality, whether it be sadist or masochist, just retire, go away. Politics is not for you. You failed, and you're part of the failure. And no, history will not judge you kindly. And no, the longer you're there, things won't be getting better. So just retire, go away. Don't make yourself more of a problem than you need to be. Let new people that are vetted for sadism and masochism and keep them out, filter them, put that filter on, and just how about this, normal people in there with normal expectations and none of this poison framing or backwards leaning limboism. So that's just a suggestion. I didn't mean to make it as much of a boogeyman as it might have come across to be. It's really pretty easy. And again, because it's so easy, because our ancestors made it so easy for us, that's why they're so paranoid about us doing that, like coming together with a normal platform to do normal things, like get rid of that bottleneck as the first thing. That's why they're so crazy about politics and making sure they pre-screen normal people out of the process as much as they can. They want normal people coming to normal conclusions about their lack of contribution to the greater good. But again, as things get worse, more people start talking, even if it's not on their TV networks or their big tech platforms. So what do they do then? Once there's like mass discreditation that happens and it starts spiraling, is that how you win a world war, or is that how you get run over? So at some point, like, in a bus hostage situation, you got 10 people. First you got 2, you got 10 people, but there's 40 people on the bus. So how many are they gonna be able to hold off before they're finally overwhelmed? Especially if the bus actually does fall. It's a magical bus, so it can fall and roll down a canyon. It doesn't necessarily blow up, and then it goes right back on top of its wheels. And then it's really a question, who's banged up more? Then you look for them, but they were thrown at a high velocity through the windows. But because you were wearing your seatbelt, that didn't happen to you. So you just walk to the front of the bus and drive on. There's maybe 10 people on the bus now. It can happen. You should watch the movie like Inception. You know how they slow things down like that and go back in time. I mean, don't go back in time. Don't be sentimental about the past. If you want to do anything, be sentimental about a better future. Turning to the problem of a financial impediment to progress, which is at the root of all of these cultural distortions. Why can't we minimize the problem? Why can't we see it as not immovable? For example, they're materialists, they're money-oriented people. Cut them some type of check, just when you tell them to retire. Maybe they'll make a deal. Maybe they have some type of business acumen that maybe they recognize the severity of the situation, so maybe they can recognize that it's probably the best time for them to walk away now with a check instead of absolutely nothing and possibly something that might not be in their favor long term. Everybody needs to think about their survival metrics when things like mass violence breaks out, like on an organized level. So if they're standing in the way, then maybe they can also, again, go away with something in their hands. Like you tell them, look, you did it this way for 100 years. Well, that's now coming to an end. You know, like the Murdoch thing. Now, all of that hasn't been broken up yet. There, as far as I know, there has not begun criminal proceedings against disinformationists. But you know, all of those things could be potentially on the table when you're doing negotiations with people that would be pretty easy to connect the dots to. Then say, look, here, you want money, you want to be in this part of the world, okay, do that. Let this thing happen. You know, maybe it can't be public. You say it's an informal agreement, something like that. Why can't and come to some agreement? Especially when it's questionable, like survivability. The survival of it is questionable. So it's like you get something or you get nothing, right? Because, you know, being the brake on a bus that needs to go because there's a big boulder coming down the hill, you need to just stop being that brake. You need to detach from the brake disc one way or another. Now, with a brake disc that's locked on, it has no volition, but we're talking about people that make decisions, that wake up and drink coffee in the morning and maybe go for a jog or sun themselves or take a massage. You know, don't necessarily want to hold on to a sinking ship. Or in this case, ships, plural, like lots of ships, all at once. So, you know, I'm all for retiring. Like, I think if you can retire at the age of 25, that is great. That's a great time. But for people that don't want to retire at 92, like these people are, like they're 120, some of these people. Like they just, who knows how they're keeping themselves alive. Like it's a complete, you know, every hour they're alive, it's a slap in the face of anyone who thinks that uh, only the bad die young. That's it's just but again, it's like negative survivor bias. So they're the survivors of like a negative selection process. It's just but look, this is the world we live in. You can see it as a tragedy or as comedy. I prefer to see it as comedy. I mean, it's just funny. It's like you almost don't want them to kick the bucket finally. It's like it's just it's like legendary. Why not? Why shouldn't they live so long? Being so worldly, it's like the world gives them a boost. It's like, look, you're so worldly, we're going to put an extra 10 years on top of an infamous ride. But it's okay, like, don't focus on the personalities. Just look at the positions. You built this whole thing, or somebody who was crazy built this whole network pyramid scheme of companies and financing and all of that. Well, they were crazy and now it doesn't work. So, you know, sign off on this, get something in return and walk away. I think they could be persuaded to do that, at least some of them. But who knows? You know, it's people that are just impenetrable. Just you have to think of them like think of kings of old. Some king they think of themselves as kings or worse. So can they be reasoned with? What do you do if they can't be reasoned with? And then you can start breaking it up into little pieces and not see it as a monolithic block. I think it you know, well, also people that have been deceived, have been misinformed, you should make allowances for those people to come over to your side if an olive branch is extended and said, look, you know, they said I kissed your girlfriend when you were in the bathroom, but here's the videotape. I wasn't in this club, so the beef between us, it doesn't exist. We have no. This was based on some type of conspiracy, right? This was based on a false presentation of information and also the time, the personalities involved, the whatever was involved at that moment. Things have changed, and now we've clarified that point, and it's not an issue. But you know, you can't be the bouncer at this place anymore because the management's changed. We're changing out the management. So, you know, having you as a bouncer doesn't make sense. So, you know, instead of just kicking you out on your can, it's just going to be sort of, what can I do for you to make this process go without a hitch? Like, what do you need to just change your mind and see what else the world has to offer you, which is a whole lot less aggravation. And just go from there. You know, I don't think if you make reasoned arguments, and this is why I am a convinced democratic type of citizen, is that I do believe by reasoning with people that you can bring them around to a reasonable position. I fundamentally believe that's true. You put in the time to explain things to people. You say, this is the way I see it. This is what we need to do. It's not what we want to do, it's what we need to do. This is the way it looks. You allow some feedback, you know, you do some comparisons, and it's a team effort. It's not a one-man job. It's not God whispered in my ear and told me this is the way and the only way. Not like that. Consensual. With substitutionist, one thing to look for. I mean, again, think of them in terms of Alinskyist. This is a radical political tactic. Is for substitutionists. So what they're doing is, on the level of political science, is they're looking for trends and they're looking for current issues because they believe if they don't react to those issues, they're not doing their job. And there's a certain truth in that. For example, in East Germany, when the frauds were running the country after the war, the workers were working like 16-hour shifts to dig themselves out of the rubble, but once they got money, they went to the stores and they had nothing to buy, and so there were strikes, and that's when finally the ideological space cadets and profiteers of military occupation, Soviet occupation, were like, ding, 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 what do we do now, sir? We can't leave the building. There's thousands of workers screaming their lungs out. So what did they do? Doot, doot, doot. Hello, yes, can you send in the tanks, please? Thanks. You know, the CCP solution. Click, you know, clear them out. Now, eventually, you know, over decades of bad working conditions, you know, they had enough reasonable bread and things like that. But, you know, living in that decade, that's real time. Those are real lives that are irrecoverable. Those people lived like that, and these were the explainers that they got. But coming back to the substitutionists, so yeah, their financial totalitarian overlords have them stepping and fetching it in front of cameras and, oh, so what's the big deal right now? Oh, there's an irregular invasion going on. So let's make sure we send a Mandarin, one of our Mandarins, to get in front of the issue. This is a tactic they use. So they make sure that the least credible person takes that talking point and becomes the front runner with it. So they're almost a little bit on the radical side of it, slightly on the discrediting side of it, because there's really no need to focus on people getting angry about being invaded by people that don't belong there and are breaking the law as the first thing they do. So just imagine, yeah, well, all these citizens, these are valuable citizens. Their first act is criminal. It's an illegal act. How do you think that relationship's going to develop over time, do you think? The first act is an illegal act. First act is a criminal act. The first act is an anti-democratic act because the people that voted to stop it, the people that they voted in, they're not stopping it. So they're not filling their mandate, which is anti-democratic. But they have these Zelenskyists, they put them in front of the issues. So they're, again, radical to the point of buffoonery, because they're also totally miscast, totally disingenuous. They themselves, like how this, they get like foreigners, getting in front of the anti-foreigner movement. So it's again an ipso facto absurdity. This creates cognitive dissonance. This also delegitimizes the outrage. So it's like the sign. Yeah, you have these concerns. We'll send it to the invisible mailbox with a clown face on it, because this is going to happen anyway. We're letting the laws be broken on this en masse, but we're just going to explain it away. That it's possible to stop. The land of Lord Nelson, Admiral Nelson, that can't stop small boats in 2023. That's too complex, too much money, too difficult, too complicated. Sure, yeah, the country that engaged in major latent European naval blockades during the Napoleonic Wars, well over their pay grade. They don't know how to do anything like that in 2023. What? An age with helicopters and satellites and modern equipment, sensors. They don't know how to do it. Can't do it. They can't figure it out. But they got their front runner in front of the camera, saying that they're really behind these outraged people this week. So that's a neo-Leninist technique. Total disingenuousness. Just saying what you think people want to hear, and then doing what you were going to do anyway. And of course, you don't have to say I was doing it purposefully. I just tried to get it done. Gosh darn it, but it just didn't get done. I don't know. I told this person to do it, and then this person told that person, and around it goes. And there's the next election, and they were in for 13 years and facilitating this illegal, anti-democratic criminal process. So, but okay, that's that. The other thing that came up was one of these political mandarins that happened to be a woman. She got criticized, like jokingly, by other political commentators. But the fact that they mention that she's, sort of a ridiculous woman on top of being ridiculous, that was too far. That was a bridge too far for mandarins. Again, I would say of the totalitarian henchman class, women make up 50%, if not more. So any one of their card-carrying demographic that gets ribbed, even if it's a joke, There has to be serious consequence. Everybody, all the betas and serfs and slaves and intellectuals, of course, need to know that's a line crossed. They will not tolerate this. This is violence. Violence. The word is violence. See again, a motive. This was an attack not just on this ridiculous Mandarin. This was an attack on all women everywhere. This was an attack on Mother Teresa. Sure. Sure it is. Yeah, that's sort of how they do it. And the guys that ribbed her, they got canceled, fired. Who knows how many years they've worked on their career on various info plantations. Fired. So it's back to working for nothing. you know. Now, on the other hand, for example, idiots like Andrew Tate, all the pickup artists, the freaking idiots, I have to agree with a certain extent that these guys, they are taking it the wrong way. They're taking it, anyone that takes it, like incels and stuff, to an extreme level, like, I'm not getting what I want from women, so I hate them all. Yeah, they are caricatures. But again, they are hyper focused on as a demographic because they're complete lunatics and miscreants. And a lot of that has to do with, if you think of it in Leninist terms, they're a disgruntled minority, which can be radicalized. And yeah, they are an anti-social force. I agree with that. I don't think, certainly, again, women, they're a mixed bag, and these PUAs and whatnot, they do injure good women. They do. That's why I have no problem in shutting them down. Also, pickup artists, man, you believe these idiots and you go out there and just start picking up random women, you're going to pick up a disease instead. That's what you're going to do. And let me tell you, gonorrhea is nothing compared to getting shacked up with one of these women that starts pumping out kids and then doesn't know how to behave or how to run a household, or has problems with listening to men in general, or take guidance because they got a chip on their shoulder thanks to their neo-Leninist upbringing, and just the general hateful, inverted and ridiculous, perverted culture that we live in. Postmodern idiocy. And again, let's not forget the totalitarian aspect of it. Decapitated society. I said it before, it's like a filler, but you can think of it as gauze. So instead of a head, the bloody, clotted gauze, that's sort of what they represent. So you have two extremist, divisive parties running around chasing themselves, and the results of that are bad for everyone else. Now, in a real information landscape, none of these people would be in it. Like, that would be exclusory. But because we're living on a vulgar planet, which is normal, it's normal. Vulgarity is normal. That's what the word means. Vulgaris. So this is, I would say it's subnormal, and certainly now, that's sort of the Leninist agitatory propaganda environment that they propagate. We're talking about companies with illicit crime connections over millions of dollars that are purveying this jazz. So, it's not all that random at the end of the day. But certainly, if you don't read anything from PUAs, don't follow them, do exclude them. Nothing they're recommending for you is good. But there's the evolutionary psychology part. You can look into that without them. Like they took that up and then they misused it, misapplying the principles. They're trying to get one up on women, but really the women end up getting a one up on you the more you get involved with them. Like they'll recommend, well, talk to 100 women and then you'll get one. Well, what? Dude, it's not necessarily the point of life. The point of life is liberation. It's not finding another womb to crawl into. Now, this does not mean you cannot have meaningful relationships with women. You absolutely can, but you do need to do a little bit more selecting, and if it doesn't happen, you're better off. Believe me, there will be enough guys to fill your spot. There's way more simps than there are lions of spirituality, spiritual resilience. And the payback on that is infinite. The payback on used goods, not so much. It's actually a liability. And women, I give them the same advice. Good women, you don't need to get shacked up with any bad man. I'm not recommending all women get shacked up and start pumping kids. That has never been my advice, never will be. I also think a lot of women aren't cut out for it. It is it's women that manage their families properly, have the right principles. That is more than a full-time job. That is an enormous achievement. I do believe mothers that are good ones, that have many kids also with men that are also good, they should get a medal. And the medal shouldn't be considered insignificant at all. It's not a token medal, it's a real one. And I do think they should talk to the kids before they give it out and say, you know what, is this for real? Like, this is she really as good as everyone thinks she is? And not like a Joan Crawford type that likes to flaunt with their designer bags, but are beating the kids with an iron with a metal clothes hanger behind closed doors. Not those types. So there is a middle ground between men and women, and believe there are more talented women in relationships than men that they get involved with. And there's also the reverse of that. There's men that are putting up with all types of shenanigans. And it's really unfortunate for those parties that are stuck in those types of situations. And on the one hand, it's the woman who got probably predated on at a young age by the goons in the area that are allowed or tolerated to be there. And on the other hand, it's the accomplished or would-be accomplished man that gets predated on by some damn hussy, or worse than a hussy, some maniacal neo-Leninist ideologue. Some you could use a bunch more descriptive adjectives, but that bothers these ideologues. There's only one version of men and women. Women are always correct. Men are always suspicious. Their motives are not necessarily without question. They need to prove themselves to be good men by being beta butt kissers in every instance take the side of the woman. That's how the female totalitarians see it, and they don't tolerate any variance. Not even your friend. If he said something, no, you need to get rid of that friend. He's a bad person. He made some truthful statement about a demographic that is it's a self-interested demographic that they're part of. So truth, no. The truth, you don't say the truth. You conform to the ideology. That's how it works. You didn't fulfill the compliance test. You're out. You're a pariah. You're an unbooked criminal in their world. Shouldn't have a job. Shouldn't be anywhere. You should just starve to death. So when they come up with that, just see them. These are the people. Okay, put them on a list. Here they are. The hateful, ideological woman. They're another one on the list. Doop. And again, they're pretty easy to spot because they're the privileged classes in a financial dictatorship. So weird, like you would think people with money would have taste. No, they have an agenda. That's it. And they're not democratically elected. So just like they're the bosses in their business with impunity, they have impunity on these talking points, editorial direction, or however they want to call it, that are extremely unpopular. So that the ratings tank after their editorial direction goes in. So it's like it's not explainable in economic terms. See, before, when there wasn't this financial totalitarianism, papers would compete for readership. So you had journalists, you had writers, you had editors. They were going for the story. They wanted to beat the other. There was competition. They wanted to beat the other brand. And they did it with writing. Now, sometimes it veered into yellow journalism. They veered into overstating the facts, which I don't recommend. I think that you need to know where that bar is. But if they were sensationalizing, it was yellow journalism. That's how Edison got his start. Now, he was more of an information guy. He started interviewing passengers from trains from different places, and then he just aggregated the news. But yellow journalism was a thing until the industry was monopolized by these financial interests. Then the financial interests became, again, ideological, a specific type of engineered division, and a specific set of tropes, whatever they thought up for their own minority benefit is the orthodoxy, and anything against that gets attacked or suppressed. But this new trope of the infallibility of women and the wrongness of criticizing any one of them, especially a political mandarin of their kind. It's hysterical. They don't understand, like when they're talking to their audience, like how ridiculous they look, like they're this contretemps and how they manage it. These are grown-ass women too, They just read off a boilerplate of nonsense and think that's gonna win over their readership. I mean, who believes these broads at the end of the day? I mean, do they believe each other? Is that how they do it? I mean, it was so funny, They had like this panel of 5. There's like one bald dude, like 50. He's got like 100-yard stare, and he's fidgeting in his seat, not wanting to say something that could offend any of these harpies. And you got another broad, she's like 75, has a full-on silicone Botox mask, whose claim to fame is like being a groupie of a rock band. So you know where she's been. Then there's another dowdy, lawyer-esque looking woman, and then, some token that, of course, is completely separated from their historical roots, like where they came from or how their country is in these matters today. Like, for example, Gabon. How are relationships between men and women in Gabon in 2023? I mean, well, I want to know. I would find that fascinating, like how they manage polygamy, for example, and other things. Like their birth rate, which is like 8 per woman and per woman and stuff like that. But the token that gets put in front of Western audiences, that he doesn't have any connection to that. That doesn't get covered in the news. That's something they're working on. They have initiatives, NGO initiatives, to try to, update Gabon to their level of civilization, which is sterile and defunct and inverted. But they're still working on it. With all their trillions, they do have to prioritize who they browbeat. And they haven't gotten around to browbeating Gabon yet. But rest assured, when their utopia goes into, has a global reach, then at some point they're going to get around to it. But by then, I'm pretty sure everything will have fallen apart, which they usurped. So the people in Gabon might not have to worry about that one. They'll have to worry about microbiological agents in their water supply. They might have to worry about starving to death in the near future, but they won't have to worry about the neo-Leninist wig flippery that Western audiences are subjected to in this time. So we'll see. Isn't it nice, once you're canceled, like you don't have to listen to plantation rules. I mean, they're excluding you from their very special, wonderful society of curmudgeons. Isn't that terrible? It's awful. You just shed a tear, every time thinking of not being lectured by humorless totalitarians. It's just, are those tears of tragedy, or are those tears of joy, my man? Let them sparkle. Tears of joy. But yeah, I get it. The financial blackmail side of this equation, I get it. It's not trivial to be thrown off a plantation if you've got a lot of liabilities. I totally understand that. But there's a point, like, do you sell your soul too? I mean, that's the point I don't agree with. You can go through the motions, and you can also get busted by these whip crackers, okay? But you can also recover, and you might shut your mouth, but you might not do that to other people. Like, you don't have to become a whip cracker yourself. That's not the lesson. That's not the takeaway you should take. So for me, for example, not starving to get death, and also not asking for donations or anything like that, what I'll do is I will auction off a work of art that I've done. And the starting price is going to be, I guess the first one I'll start off with $5,000. So if you don't have that, just don't worry about it. Maybe one day you will. Maybe one day it'll be worth 500,000. Maybe it won't. There's no promises. But for someone who appreciates art, they get the digital rights, and it can be transferred between us. And then, there's not just one. I have a limited edition. Let's say, 50. And the first one will go for 5,000, and the 50th one for maybe $1 million, something like that. So if that idea doesn't appeal to you, then just don't collect. You don't have to do anything. It's not a recommendation, but it is something you can take away from the overview.